Alright, Disney review. This is gonna be fun. Let's start by saying that I am a Disney fan. I may not be completely on board with most of their recent outings, but overall I would still consider myself a fan of the company, and they still turn out a good product under their name every so often. With that said, Raya and the Last Dragon sucks. This latest animated effort by the mouse has to be one of the most underwhelming, baffling, unappealing, frustrating messes that I've ever seen from this studio. I know some, if not most of you, are probably filling the comment section about how I have no idea what I'm talking about and that my accent gives you ear cancer, but to those who can accept a different point of view, let's talk about what exactly made me say those things about the movie. But you know what? Let's start positive and talk first and foremost about the things I liked about it, because you know what? I'm fair. And let's get the obvious positive out of the way. The animation is gorgeous. The backgrounds and particle effects look amazing. The action sequences are fast-paced, well shot, and are a visual treat to look at. The colors are bright and vibrant, and no location is like the previous one before it. With that said, I also liked this kid character who runs the ship they come across. He's fun, I'd actually want more of him at some point. The message is also pretty good, even if its execution isn't, but we'll get to it later. So now, after we've gone over the things I liked about the movie, it's time for all the stuff I didn't, and in order to do that, we have to start at the beginning. In the land of Commandra, there are 5 tribes currently at war for an orb created by ancient dragons to protect the humans from the drone, an evil purple smoke which kind of reminds me of the Time Eater from Sonic Generations of all things. Raya, the daughter of one of the chiefs, is training to guard the stone from falling into the wrong hands. One day, during a peace gathering, Raya lets one of the other chieftess's daughter, Namari, know the location of the orb. A fight breaks loose between the tribes, the orb ends up breaking apart, turning most of the people present into stone, including Raya's father. 6 years later, Raya is on the look for the last dragon to ever exist, and the creator of the orb, Sisu, to help her put the orb back together and save the kingdom. Along the way, the two come across a bunch of characters, have a fight with Namari every so often, argue whether or not they should trust people, and save the world because obviously it's a Disney movie. I guess if we need a good place to start with, it will be Raya herself. On the surface, she's not a bad character at all. She knows how to fight, she has this charm to her, and she has the qualities that one would look in a heroine like her, as she wants to save the kingdom from being turned into stone. But she isn't really that interesting when it comes to knowing her as a person, and not the main character of a movie. What do I mean by that? Well, let's look at other Disney princesses and understand this better. In Tangled, Rapunzel wants to see the lights that show up on her birthday, but we also see that she is a fun-loving and outgoing person, who also has a bunch of insecurities which slow her down. In Frozen, we have Anna and Elsa. One sister wants to live in the outside world, while the other wants to keep the people around her safe. But we also see how one is socially awkward and hot-tempered, while the other one can also be mischievous and even snarky. What's Raya's deal? She has trust issues. And yes, granted, her trust issues are justified, since Namari betrayed her at a young age, but we never get to know more about her other than that. All she has is the one quirk which ties to her character development, which ironically makes her a much shallower character. Also, these trust issues are pretty inconsistent as she is trusting the other characters she meets along the way. One of them even robs her, and yet it's still coming back as her most notable flaw. But you know what? Fine, this flaw leads to her character development, which is learning to trust people around you and give them a second chance. Well, that doesn't really work when the change comes both out of nowhere and inconsistently. I already mentioned the crewmates, but Namari, where do I even begin? So, Raya wants to have a calm conversation with Namari where they'll exchange the orb pieces she has. Namari betrays them for no good reason at all and kills Sisu. We'll come back to this later. Raya and Namari fight each other, and then after Namari calls Raya out on her actions, Raya just trusts her again? I'm sorry, what? So Raya wouldn't listen to the dragon she spent 6 years looking for and the entire kingdom worships, but she'll change her stance after the person who betrayed her and caused her trust issues to begin with said mean things to her? Okay, sure movie, whatever you say. And then we have Namari, which, just like Raya, isn't a bad character on the surface. But it also means she has the same problem and we don't get to know her as much as well. I appreciate the movie not making her a physical villain, but it seems like she only exists to have martial arts battles. I'm not against some badass fight scenes, but if I don't care about the people fighting, which I don't, then the fight scenes lose their impact. And then, of course, by the end of the movie, she does the right thing and saves everyone because it's Disney and we can't have sad endings in Disney. I guess the next thing I have to talk about is Sisu, and yeah, she's the worst thing about this movie. Every possible trait you can hate in a comic relief is presented in this blubbering mess of a character. Unfunny jokes? Check. She doesn't shut up? Check. Annoying? Super check. Her design? Atrocious. I don't get how did this character went through so many test screenings and so many people and nobody just stopped at some point and said she's awful. But let's break it one by one. The design is one of the most boring dragon designs I've ever seen. And before you type that she's based on Asian dragon designs, to this I say, how exactly? Aside from the length of her body, nothing resembles such dragons. Where are the colors? Where are the patterns? The original concept art showed those things and stayed closer to such a look, so what's the final movie's excuse? And who decided to give her Elsa's face? What is this human face doing on a dragon? It looks uncanny whenever she speaks, like it doesn't even belong on her. From any way you're looking at it, this design is just a pure mess. And then we have the character itself. I'm not familiar with Awkwafina and I don't wish to discredit her too much as I'm sure a lot of it could also be bad direction, but is she a comedian? I only thought so because there are so many moments in this movie where they just let her talk on and on and on in a desperate attempts to make her funny. And it just doesn't work. Just because Robin Williams was allowed to improvise in Aladdin doesn't mean anyone can pull that shtick off. And you also need to know when to cut off the improv, because if you don't, which these directors clearly didn't, you just get long scenes where the character yaps on and on about basically nothing, and if it's not funny, which it isn't, it drags the scene to the point of audible groaning. While Raya's problem is that her arc defines her character and nothing else, Sisu's one problem out of many is that she doesn't have any kind of arc. She created the orb in order to protect the humans because her dragon siblings trusted her with that. Okay. She went into hiding and Raya found her. Fine, I guess. She tags along in the journey and tries to teach Raya how to trust people. I guess this connects to the story somewhat. She dies. Kinda wish it was Permanent if I'm honest. And then she's resurrected. What purpose did this character serve? She's useless. The part of teaching Raya how to trust people could have been served by literally anyone else, and nothing would have changed. Hell, it might have been better if it was anyone else but Sisu. You want Raya to trust others again? Show it through the crewmates who she learns to trust, and not the dragon who she's pretty much biased towards. And now, since I know people are going to deflect everything I said by claiming that this movie finally represents South Asian culture, allow me to say that even the representation sucks. Don't get me wrong, representation is very important, and I'm glad to see it happen more and more. One of my best friends is Indian, and I was actually excited for her to have this movie. And even she will tell you this representation doesn't speak for her. So you can shove that excuse in my face all you want, but when the audience represented says this isn't a good representation of their culture, guess what? It doesn't hold any water. Besides, there's nothing about South Asian culture represented in this movie. Sisu's design I already talked about, but what about the other things? food, traditions, folklore? Is there anything South Asian about this movie? They eat with chopsticks? Go South Asia? Also, how can a movie represent South Asia when the entire cast is East Asian? I hope you do know there's a difference, Disney. Or do you think all of Asia is defined by Japanese and Chinese people? Either way, that shoots the representation excuse in the face. Great idea, terrible execution. With all that said, I think it's time to talk about my biggest problem with this movie. Nothing is original. Now, don't get me wrong, no movie has to be 100% original, and a lot of my favorite movies are filled with cliches as well. Take How to Train Your Dragon, for example. One of my favorite movies of all time. That has a bunch of cliches like the dorky main character, the racist father, the list goes on. But not only did that movie had good and three-dimensional characters who we got to know and connect with outside of their flaws, it also had its own spin on these cliches that made them worthwhile, and not just like they plastered a bunch of movies together. Raya and the Last Dragon doesn't do that. The world is pretty much the same as Avatar The Last Airbender. Raya and Namari's rivalry is basically the same as Adora and Catra in the Netflix She-Ra show, but without the lesbian angle, which again, representation, how about giving us that in your motion pictures, Disney? Dragons? I bring back How to Train Your Dragon, where you have tons of different looking dragons with their own strengths, weaknesses and designs, instead of just recoloring the same model. Other Disney movies like Moana also did representation better, not to mention Pixar's Coco and Brave, which represented Mexican and Scottish cultures way better than this movie did South Asia. Nothing in this movie is unique or has any worth in the long run. It's a movie you'll watch once and then forget, because there are so many better options out there. And when all a movie does is making me think about those better options, it fails at being entertaining. And if a movie fails at that, it failed its purpose. I've been talking about this movie for a while now, and the more I write this script, the more I realize just how many problems I have with it. But believe me or not, I don't want this. I don't want to hate this movie and trash it online because making fun of Disney is popular. I wanted this movie to remind me why I like Disney in the first place, and for me to tell you that it's worth those extra $30 Disney charges for it. But that's not the case. It relies on gimmicks and being inclusive that they actually forgot what makes a movie work is its story and its characters. When these fail, the movie fails, and that's sadly what happened here. I just hope that when Disney's animation team brings us their next major film, I'll be able to sing a different tune about it, because this movie, I honestly hope I'll never have to talk about it ever again.